There comes a moment when staying the same becomes more painful than burning it all down. You feel it. You have felt it for longer than you want to admit. That heaviness when you wake up and realize you are living inside a life that no longer fits who you are becoming. That quiet disgust when you catch yourself repeating the same habits, the same excuses, the same version of a person you have already outgrown. Something inside you is cracking, and that crack is not a breakdown. It is an opening. 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosophers understood something that most modern people spend their entire lives running from. They understood that the person you are right now is not the person you are meant to remain, and the only way forward is through fire. Not the fire of destruction for its own sake, but the fire of purification, the way a blacksmith heats raw iron until it glows, then hammers it into something the world cannot easily break. That is what real transformation demands. Not gentle inspiration, not a motivational quote on a screen, but the deliberate dismantling of everything you built out of fear, habit, and the expectations of people who never knew the real you. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, wrote in the privacy of his journal words he never intended anyone to read. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He did not write this because he was at peace with himself. He wrote it because he was at war with the same complacency, the same avoidance, the same pull of the old self that you are feeling right now. Even an emperor had to burn the old version of himself every single morning. What follows are 7 Stoic laws of personal rebirth. Not theory, not philosophy meant to sit on a shelf. These are forging principles, each one designed to break what no longer belongs and shape what is ready to rise. The fire has already started inside you. You would not be here if it had not. The only question now is whether you will step into it or spend the rest of your life running from the heat. Law 1. Enter the furnace of solitude. You cannot rebuild a life you have never honestly examined, and you cannot honestly examine your life while the world is screaming in your ear. Solitude is not loneliness. Loneliness is the ache of being alone without direction. Solitude is the power of being alone with purpose. And the difference between the two is the difference between suffering and transformation. The Stoics did not retreat from the world because they were weak. They retreated because they understood that truth only speaks when the noise finally stops. Seneca wrote to his closest friend, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest fare and the roughest dress, saying to yourself, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" He was not recommending poverty. He was recommending honesty. The kind of honesty that only surfaces when you strip away every comfort, every performance, every mask you wear to make the world approve of you. And here is the truth that solitude reveals. Most people have no idea who they actually are. You think you know yourself, but what you know is the version of you that was shaped by the room you are standing in. When you are around certain friends, you become one person. Around family, another. At work, another still. You adjust your opinions, your energy, your ambitions to match whatever ceiling the group has silently agreed upon. You do this so often that you forget it is a performance. The mask fuses to the face, and the real you, the one buried beneath years of adapting, barely has room to breathe. Solitude rips the mask off. In solitude, the lies you have been telling yourself become unbearable. The lie that you do not have time to change. The lie that things will get better on their own. The lie that staying comfortable is the same as being safe. Solitude shows you the habits that are quietly eating your potential alive. The mornings you waste before they even begin. The hours you hand over to a screen that gives nothing back. The relationships you maintain out of obligation rather than genuine connection. The goals you abandoned not because they were impossible, but because they required you to become someone uncomfortable and unfamiliar. Marcus Aurelius began every morning in solitude, before the generals arrived, before the senators demanded his attention, before the crushing weight of an empire pressed down on his shoulders. He sat alone with nothing but a journal and a candle, and he wrote the truth about himself, his flaws, his weaknesses, his struggles with anger and distraction, and the temptation to take the easy path. He did not write to impress. He wrote to excavate. And that daily excavation built a character so strong it governed the most powerful civilization on Earth without losing its soul. You do not need to govern an empire to start this practice. You need 10 minutes. 10 minutes of real silence. Not with a podcast in the background, not with music filling the space. Real silence where the only voice is the one you have been drowning out. Ask yourself the questions you have been avoiding. Am I living the life I chose, or the life that simply happened to me? Are my habits building the future I want, or protecting the past I am afraid to leave behind? If I changed absolutely nothing and continued exactly as I am for 5 more years, would I be proud of where I stand? The answers will not be comfortable. They are not supposed to be. They are supposed to be true. And truth, no matter how painful, is the first material you need to build anything worth standing on. The furnace of solitude does not destroy you. It burns away everything that was never really yours. The opinions you inherited, the fears you absorbed, the identity you assembled from the leftover expectations of people who never asked what you actually wanted. What remains after the fire is the foundation. And on that foundation, everything new becomes possible. Law 2. Kill the habits that built your prison. You are not stuck because of your circumstances. You are stuck because of your patterns. And the hardest thing about patterns is that they do not feel like chains. They feel like you. The way you react when someone criticizes you. The way you reach for your phone the moment silence arrives. The way you say yes when everything inside you screams no. The way you choose distraction over discipline, comfort over confrontation, the familiar over the frightening. These are not random behaviors. They are architectural. They are the bricks of the prison you have been building around yourself for years, one unconscious repetition at a time. And you have lived inside that prison for so long that you have forgotten the door was never locked. Epictetus understood this. He was born a slave. His leg was deliberately broken by his master and it never healed. He spent years in literal chains before earning his freedom. And yet, when he finally stood before his students as one of the most respected philosophers in Rome, he taught them something that had nothing to do with external bondage. He said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He was not speaking about optimism. He was speaking about patterns. Your reactions are habits. Your emotions are habits. Your identity is a collection of habits repeated so many times that they hardened into something you mistook for personality. Think about it with complete honesty. Your procrastination is not laziness. It is an old pattern of avoiding discomfort that was useful when you were young and powerless. But you are not young and powerless anymore, and every time you obey that pattern, you hand the keys of your future to a version of yourself that should have been retired years ago. Your people-pleasing is not kindness. It is a survival reflex from a time when saying the wrong thing meant losing love. But you are no longer a child negotiating for safety. And every time you abandon your own needs to manage someone else's emotions, you pour another layer of concrete on the prison floor. Your distraction is not relaxation. It is anesthesia. It is the thing you use to silence the voice inside you that keeps whispering, "This is not enough. You were built for more than this." Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." The habits you are afraid to break feel essential only because they are familiar. And familiar is a powerful drug. A cage feels like home when you have been inside it long enough. But home and prison are not the same thing. The Stoics did not negotiate with patterns that weakened them. They did not say, "I will try to be better." They identified the behavior that was destroying their character, and they cut it out with the precision of a surgeon removing something that would kill the patient if it stayed. This means you must look at your average day and interrogate every recurring behavior with a single question. Is this building the person I want to become, or maintaining the person I need to leave behind? If the answer is the second, the habit does not get a negotiation. It does not get next week. It does not get one more chance. It gets a death sentence. Because you cannot grow a new life in the soil that poisoned the old one. You cannot build a cathedral on a crumbling foundation and wonder why the walls keep falling. The prison was never your circumstances. The prison was your patterns. And the only person with the authority to tear it down is the one who finally stops pretending the walls are keeping them safe. Law 3. Step into the forge of discomfort. Everything you want is on the other side of something you do not want to do. The confidence you crave lives behind the conversation you are avoiding. The discipline you admire lives behind the morning routine you keep postponing. The peace you long for lives behind the truth you are afraid to tell yourself. Discomfort is not the enemy of your transformation. It is the raw material. The ancient Stoics understood this so deeply that they practiced hardship on purpose, not as punishment, as preparation. Seneca would sleep on hard ground when he had access to the finest beds in Rome. Marcus Aurelius rose before dawn in freezing military camps when he could have remained in a heated palace. Epictetus lived in radical simplicity despite becoming one of the most famous teachers in the empire. They were not suffering for the sake of suffering. They were forging a kind of strength that comfort could never produce. A sword is not made by placing metal in a warm bath. It is made by heating it until it glows, hammering it against iron, and plunging it into cold water. The discomfort is not a side effect of the creation. It is the creation. Your comfort zone is the exact shape of your limitations. Everything inside that zone you already have. Everything outside it is everything you want, but have not yet become strong enough to hold. And every single day that you choose comfort over growth, you cast a vote for your limitations. You tell your own mind, "I am not capable of the harder path." And over months and years, that message hardens into identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who could do difficult things. You become someone who manages ease, avoids friction, and calls that survival. But the Stoics did not seek random discomfort. They sought specific discomfort. Discomfort that targeted their weaknesses. Discomfort that stretched the exact muscles their character needed to grow. Seneca fasted not because hunger was noble, but because he wanted to destroy his dependence on excess. Marcus Aurelius confronted difficult people not because he enjoyed conflict, but because he wanted to master the part of himself that reacted with anger instead of wisdom. Discomfort with direction is transformation. Discomfort without direction is just suffering. So ask yourself, what are you avoiding right now? What conversation, what habit, what truth about yourself have you pushed to the back of your mind because facing it would require you to feel something uncomfortable? That is your forge. That is where the next version of you is waiting. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The obstacle is not blocking your growth. The obstacle is your growth. Every time you walk toward discomfort instead of away from it, you rewrite the story you have been telling yourself about who you are. You prove, not to the world but to yourself, that you are capable of more than the old version ever believed. And each proof compounds. Each difficult choice stacks on the one before it, until the person who once avoided everything hard becomes the person who seeks the hard thing first. The Forge does not care about your excuses. It does not care about your readiness. It cares about one thing: whether you step in. Step in, because the person waiting on the other side of the fire cannot be reached any other way. Law 4. Replace motivation with iron discipline. Everyone knows what motivation feels like. That surge of fire on day 1, the journal entries, the early alarm, the absolute certainty that this time will be different. And everyone knows what happens next. Day 7, the fire dims. Day 14, the alarm gets silenced. Day 21, the journal collects dust and the old habits return like old friends who never left, just waited. This is not failure. This is the natural lifespan of motivation. Motivation is an emotion. And emotions, by their very nature, are temporary. They rise when life feels exciting, and they collapse the moment things become tedious, difficult, or invisible. If your transformation depends on motivation, your transformation has an expiration date. The Stoics did not build their lives on feelings. They built their lives on systems, on repetition, on the unglamorous decision to do the correct thing whether they felt like it or not. Marcus Aurelius, the ruler of the entire known world, wrote in his private journal, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for?" Even the emperor struggled to get out of bed. The man who commanded legions and decided the fate of nations had to argue with himself at 5 in the morning like every other person who has ever lived. The difference is that he got up. Not because he felt inspired, not because motivation struck like lightning, but because discipline had become his architecture. And architecture does not depend on weather. Discipline is the decision you make before the feeling arrives. It is the promise you keep on the days when keeping it feels meaningless. It is the action you take when no one is watching, when no one will applaud, when the only reward is the quiet knowledge that you did not betray the person you are building. Anyone can change on a motivated Monday, but can you change on an exhausted Wednesday? Can you change on a Friday when every distraction in the world is calling your name? Can you change on a Sunday evening when the old version of you whispers that one more week of waiting will not matter? Discipline answers yes, every single time, regardless of how you feel. Seneca observed that people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. Time is the raw material of your future self, and discipline is how you protect it from the impulses that serve your past. Think of discipline not as willpower, but as architecture. You do not wake up every morning and fight your way through temptation. You design your environment so that the right choices become the path of least resistance. You set out your clothes the night before so the morning has no negotiation. You delete the apps that steal your hours so discipline does not have to wrestle distraction. You schedule your hardest work before your energy fades so the important things are never at the mercy of your mood. These are not dramatic changes. They are structural ones, and structure will carry you further than any burst of motivation ever could. Motivation visits. Discipline lives with you. And the person you want to become is not built by visitors. They are built by what stays. Law 5. Guard the doors to your mind. You would never leave the doors of your home wide open and then wonder why your house filled with strangers. Yet that is exactly what most people do with the most valuable space they possess: their mind. Every piece of content you consume is an instruction your subconscious obeys. Every conversation you engage in plants a seed that will grow into a thought, a belief, and eventually an action. Every environment you tolerate becomes the architecture of your inner world. The Stoics understood that you do not rise above your inputs. You become them. Epictetus taught, "The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control." You cannot control the chaos of the world, but you can control which parts of the world you invite into your mind. And that single choice shapes everything. Think about the last 24 hours honestly. How many minutes did you spend absorbing the curated highlight reels of people you have never met, measuring your real life against their performance? How many hours did you donate to content that gave you nothing except the vague sensation of time disappearing? How many conversations did you sit through that drained your energy without depositing a single useful idea in return? Every one of those inputs left a fingerprint on your mind. And over time, fingerprints become patterns. Patterns become beliefs. Beliefs become identity. If you spend your mornings consuming outrage, your mind becomes agitated. If you spend your evenings consuming comparison, your mind becomes inadequate. If you surround yourself with people who have accepted mediocrity, your mind quietly adjusts its expectations to match the room. The Stoics were ruthless editors of their mental diet. Marcus Aurelius filled his inner circle with philosophers and truth-tellers, not flatterers. Seneca chose his friendships with surgical precision and warned against those that corroded character from the inside. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach." Your physical environment matters. Clutter in your space becomes clutter in your mind. Disorder on your desk mirrors disorder in your thinking. The Stoics valued simplicity not because possessions are harmful, but because excess creates noise. And noise drowns the signal of your highest thoughts. Your digital environment matters even more. Every notification is a hand reaching into your consciousness and rearranging your priorities without your permission. Every algorithm is an invisible architect redesigning your attention for someone else's profit. The Stoics could not have imagined the smartphone, but they would have recognized it instantly. An infinite distraction engine disguised as a tool for connection. When you begin to rebuild yourself, your environment must be rebuilt alongside you. Old spaces carry the energy of old habits. Old content feeds the old mind. Old routines reinforce the old identity. You cannot plant a new garden in contaminated soil and expect it to flourish. Guard the doors to your mind the way the ancients guarded the entrance to a sacred temple. Not everything deserves access. Not everyone deserves influence. Not every voice that speaks has earned the right to be heard. Let in only what strengthens you. Let in only what aligns with who you are becoming. And close the door firmly on everything else. Law 6. Release the people who hold you down. This is the law that will test you more deeply than any other. Because the first 5 laws happen in private, you can enter solitude without anyone knowing. You can kill your patterns behind closed doors. You can build discipline in silence. But the moment your transformation touches your relationships, it becomes visible. And visibility invites resistance. Not everyone in your life is meant to walk into your next chapter. Not because they are bad people, but because the person they know, the person they are connected to, the person they are comfortable with, is the old you. And the old you is the one you have decided to burn. The Stoics understood this without sentimentality. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about navigating difficult, irrational, and draining people. Not because he lacked compassion, but because he recognized that you cannot protect your inner peace while granting unlimited access to those who disrupt it. Here is the truth that will sting. Some of the people closest to you are invested in the old version of you staying alive. Not out of malice, out of comfort. Your old self was predictable. It did not challenge them. It did not make them question their own choices. Your insecurities made them feel secure. Your limitations made their limitations feel acceptable. Your lack of boundaries made their lives smoother. The moment you begin to change, these people feel something shift beneath them. And it frightens them. Not because your growth threatens them directly, but because your growth implies something about their stagnation. If you can change, it means they could too. And that is a mirror most people would rather shatter than face. So they resist. Sometimes quietly, a dismissive comment about your new habits, a subtle mockery dressed as humor, a withdrawal of warmth precisely when you need it most, a silence where encouragement should have lived. Sometimes openly, telling you that you have changed as if growth were an accusation, accusing you of arrogance for wanting more, making you feel guilty for spending time on yourself instead of managing their comfort. Epictetus warned his students about this dynamic with the kind of bluntness only a man who was once literally enslaved could offer. He said, "If you wish to improve, be content to appear foolish and stupid in external matters." He was saying that your transformation will look wrong to the people who only understood the old you. And if their approval becomes the condition of your evolution, you will never evolve. You will shrink back. You will soften your standards. You will apologize for growing. And one morning you will wake up inside the same prison you swore you would leave. Except now, it is worse because you can see the door you almost walked through. Releasing people is not cruelty. It is clarity. It does not mean burning bridges or declaring enemies or slamming doors in fury. It means quietly, firmly, and with complete self-respect, choosing to redirect your energy toward relationships that honor who you are becoming rather than who you used to be. It means accepting the painful truth that love and alignment are not always the same thing. You can care about someone deeply and still recognize that their constant presence in your daily life is incompatible with your growth. This truth is not easy to absorb, but absorbing it is exactly what separates people who transform from people who almost did. You will feel guilt. Let it come, and then let it pass. Guilt is the voice of your old conditioning. It is the part of you that was trained to believe that loyalty means staying the same, that being a good person means never outgrowing anyone, that love requires you to sacrifice your evolution on the altar of someone else's comfort zone. The Stoics saw this differently. They believed that your highest loyalty belongs to your own character, not because selfishness is a virtue, but because a person who abandons their own growth has nothing genuine to offer anyone. You cannot pour from a foundation that is crumbling. You cannot guide others from a life you have not taken responsibility for. Seneca wrote, "One of the most beautiful qualities of true friendship is to understand and to be understood." True friendship understands that people grow. True friendship does not punish evolution. True friendship does not require you to remain small and familiar so that the other person never has to confront their own stagnation. If someone cannot celebrate your growth, they are not mourning your friendship. They are mourning the version of you they could control. And the moment you see that clearly, something inside you shifts. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who have no intention of respecting them. You stop defending your ambitions to people who abandoned their own. You stop shrinking yourself in rooms that cannot hold who you are becoming. You stop performing the old version of yourself so that other people can remain comfortable around you. You release them, not with anger, not with resentment, with the quiet dignity of someone who understands that not every bond was meant to survive every season of your life. Some will say you have changed. Good. That was the entire point. Some will say you think you are better than them. You are not better. You are different. And different is something they were never prepared for. Some will leave without a word. Let them. The silence they leave behind is not empty. It is available. Available for people who speak the language of growth instead of the dialect of limitation. Available for relationships built on mutual elevation instead of mutual stagnation. Available for the kind of connection that does not ask you to shrink as the price of belonging. As you rise, you will find them. People who challenge you without diminishing you. People who hold you accountable because they believe in where you are going, not because they want to control you. People who respect your boundaries because they understand what boundaries actually mean. Your circle will become smaller, but it will become so much more powerful. Protect it, curate it, and never apologize for the space you created by releasing what no longer served you. Release the anchors, not with bitterness for what was, but with absolute commitment to what must come next. So, Law 7. Die daily. Rise daily. Most people believe transformation is a single event, a breakthrough moment, a dramatic decision, a line in the sand that separates the old from the new forever. It is not. Transformation is what happens the morning after the breakthrough, and the morning after that, and every morning for the rest of your life when two versions of you compete for the day, and you must choose which one gets to live. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. But that privilege arrives with a decision. Every single morning, the old you wakes up alongside the new one. The old you wants to sleep in, reach for the phone, avoid the work, postpone the truth, slide back into the grooves of yesterday because yesterday was easy and today requires effort. The new you wants to rise with intention. Begin with silence. Face what is difficult before it grows impossible. Build the discipline one decision at a time. Protect the hours that construct your future from the habits that serve your past. Both versions are real. And every day, you cast a vote. The version that wins is simply the one you vote for more often. This is why the Stoics invented the evening review. Before sleep, they would sit in silence and conduct an honest audit of the day that had just passed. Not as punishment, as architecture. What did I do well? Where did I fall short? Where did the old self win today? And where did the new self prevail? What can I adjust tomorrow so that the new self wins more often? Seneca described this practice with rare intimacy. He wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I have done and said, hiding nothing from myself and passing nothing by." Imagine the compounding effect of this practice. Not done once when you feel inspired, done every single night. Thousands of honest self-examinations stacking on top of each other until self-awareness becomes not something you practice, but something you are. Rebirth is not lightning. It is sunrise. It happens slowly. It happens reliably. And it only happens for those who show up to witness it. There will be days when you feel like nothing has changed, when the old habits nearly win, when the familiar gravity of your former life pulls harder than the uncertain promise of your future, when the voice of the old you is louder, more convincing, more comfortable than the quiet discipline of the new. The Stoics expected this. They did not view bad days as failure. They viewed them as data, as information about where the old self still has strength and where the new self needs reinforcement. The question was never whether you would stumble. The question was always whether you would stand up and choose again. That is daily rebirth. Not perfection. Persistence. Not a single magnificent transformation, but 1,000 invisible ones. Each one small. Each one quiet. Each one strung together by the thread of daily discipline. Until one day you look in the mirror and the person staring back is someone the old you would not even recognize. Die daily to the patterns that weaken you. Rise daily into the identity that serves your future. And trust that the compound interest of consistent choice will build a life your former self could not have imagined. The old you had to crack for the new you to rise. Everything you have heard is not information. It is a mirror held close enough that you cannot look away. You entered the furnace of solitude and heard what the noise had been drowning out. You identified the habits that built the walls around you and chose to tear them down instead of redecorating the cell. You stepped into the forge of discomfort and discovered that the thing you were avoiding was the very thing that would make you stronger. You replaced the fleeting warmth of motivation with the permanent architecture of discipline. You guarded the doors to your mind because you finally understood that everything you let in becomes a part of you. You released the people who needed the old you to stay alive so that the new you could finally breathe. And you committed to dying and rising daily because you now understand that rebirth is not an event. It is a practice you return to every morning for the rest of your life. These 7 laws are not steps you complete and leave behind. They are principles you return to every time the old version tries to reclaim its throne. And it will try. That is certain. There will be mornings when the old habits feel irresistible. Nights when the loneliness that follows your boundaries aches more than the comfort you surrendered. Moments when the people you released leave a silence so loud it feels like a mistake. Do not believe the voice that says this was an error. That voice belongs to the person you are leaving behind. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire while burying children, enduring betrayal, and fighting a plague that killed millions. And every single night, alone in his tent, he wrote reminders to himself. Not because he had mastered these truths, but because mastery is not a destination. It is a daily practice that never ends. The fact that you are here, that you listened to every word, that something inside you resonated with this fire, means the old you has already begun to crack. The new you is forming in the spaces between who you were and who you are choosing to become. You are not starting over. You are starting from everything you have survived. Every failure was forging. Every wound was shaping. Every night you thought you would not make it was proof that you could. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it." The waste ends now. Step into the furnace. Kill the patterns. Embrace the fire. Build with discipline. Guard your mind. Release the anchors. And choose your rebirth every single day. The person you are becoming is worth every flame you walk through to reach them.